The grand chandelier sparkled above as Clint Eastwood stepped into the five-star hotel's luxurious dining hall. His simple yet confident presence contrasted with the extravagance surrounding him. Dressed in a modest yet elegant suit, he walked with the quiet authority that had defined him for decades. As he took a seat near the window, admiring the city skyline, a young waiter, Daniel, approached. With a practiced smile but evident arrogance, Daniel glanced at Clint's attire and scoffed internally. To him, Clint didn't fit the profile of the usual elite guests who frequented the restaurant. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right place?" Daniel asked, his voice laced with condescension. Clint looked up, his sharp blue eyes scanning the waiter's expression. "I believe so," he replied calmly. The waiter smirked, shaking his head. "We have a strict dress code, sir. This is an exclusive dining area for our VIP guests." Other patrons began to glance in their direction, sensing the tension. Clint merely leaned back, observing the young man, not with anger, but with an unsettling patience. Daniel sighed dramatically, as if dealing with an inconvenience. "Look, sir, I can recommend some other places. Maybe something more casual?" A soft chuckle came from a nearby table where a group of wealthy businessmen sat, amused by the spectacle. Clint remained unfazed. "And if I choose to stay?" he asked, his voice steady. The waiter smirked. "Then, I'm afraid you'll have to prove that you belong here," he said, expecting Clint to be intimidated. Just then, the restaurant manager walked in, sensing the commotion. The moment his eyes landed on Clint Eastwood, his face went pale. He rushed over, pushing Daniel aside. "Mr. Eastwood. I deeply apologize for any inconvenience," the manager said, his voice trembling. The entire dining hall went silent. The businessmen who had chuckled moments ago were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Daniel blinked, confused. "Wait. Eastwood? As in Clint Eastwood," he stammered, realizing his mistake. The manager's face hardened as he turned to Daniel. "Do you have any idea who you just disrespected?" he hissed. Daniel swallowed hard, his arrogance vanishing instantly. Clint, however, remained calm. "Relax, son," he said, addressing both the waiter and the manager. "Respect should be given regardless of status. That's a lesson I learned a long time ago." His words hit Daniel like a ton of bricks. The room, once filled with murmurs and judgment, now felt suffocatingly silent. The manager scrambled to make amends, pulling out the finest wine from the collection. "Please, Mr. Eastwood, allow us to offer our sincerest apologies with the best service possible," he insisted. Clint shook his head. "I just came here for a quiet meal," he said, his voice steady. "But maybe this young man learned something more valuable tonight than any fancy dish you could serve." The message was clear, and Daniel, red-faced with shame, nodded. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Clint simply nodded, finally opening the menu. As Clint enjoyed his meal, the weight of the moment hung in the air. Guests who had dismissed him earlier now whispered about his humility. The businessmen who had laughed shifted uncomfortably in their seats, reminded of their own arrogance. Daniel, now more attentive than ever, personally ensured that Clint's dining experience was flawless. He wasn't just serving a Hollywood legend, he was serving a man who had just taught him a lesson in dignity. Clint could feel the young man's sincerity growing with every action. As he finished his meal, he placed a generous tip on the table, meeting Daniel's gaze. "Remember this," he said, standing up. "Respect isn't about money or status. It's about how you treat people, no matter who they are." The words resonated deeply, not just with Daniel, but with everyone who had witnessed the event. As Clint Eastwood walked out of the luxury hotel, the realization of what had just happened spread through the dining hall. The guests who had judged him felt ashamed. The manager, though relieved that Clint hadn't taken offense, knew he had to reassess how his staff treated people. But most importantly, Daniel stood frozen, staring at the generous tip and replaying Clint's words in his mind. He had entered that shift with arrogance, believing status defined worth. But now, he understood that true respect was earned, not demanded. With a deep breath, he vowed to change. As Clint stepped into his car, he glanced back once, watching Daniel bow his head in reflection. A small smile tugged at Clint's lips. Lessons of life were not always taught in classrooms, sometimes, they were taught in the most unexpected places. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss another powerful tale.